Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Today on the program, we have a very special guest. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity and more to the point, just kind of what is really new with cybersecurity and, instance cybersecurity intelligence. This is going to be a very fun segment because, just the other day we had Scott Schober on talking all about, everything that's happening there, and of course his speaking engagement with DEF CON and Black Hat and all that good stuff. And then of course every other week it seems like we are reporting on a new record for tens of millions of dollars in ransomware. Computers being taken over. It's a mess out there, and I'm hoping that our guests can fix it all in one fell swoop because cybersecurity, there's one silver bullet. Everything can be solved very, very quickly and easily. Now with all that sarcasm. The second part of the show, we'll have computer and technology news if we have time for it. Definitely want to stick around for that. We have a lot of different stories, and hey, it's just to keep you up to date and ourselves up to date. Now, with all that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest's website, or Fletch.ai, if you can't remember that. Computeramerica.com will have a link to their homepage right there on our homepage, and that will be very convenient for you. So if you're driving, if your hands are tied, we hope that you get out of whatever situation that you're in and you are able to visit the site. While you're there, reviews, articles, podcasts. If you can't catch us live on IRN, the podcast is the next best place. Social media, so on and so forth. Hey, it's all there for you. Now, that's my morning announcements. Why don't we go ahead and bring on our guests? And we'll just have fun with this one. So joining us today is Fletch.ai, and or just Fletch if you'd rather. And we have with us the CEO and co-founder of Fletch, Mr. Grant Wernick. So Grant, welcome on to Computer America. How you doing?
Hey Ben, I'm doing great, man. Coming to you live from Walnut Creek, California.
It's and I'm really happy that you could. I think this segment's gonna be really fun, and so I think a good place to start, as always, is the beginning. And why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of background on yourself? How long have you been in cybersecurity, and then a bit of background on Fletch and what need you. A bit of your background, and then we'll get into Fletch.
Okay, sure. So I've been in technology for quite a while. So a little bit about me. I founded multiple startups, all of which have been in machine learning, natural language processing, both in the consumer space and within the enterprise space. I have this really firm belief where we've been in this world where we have to adapt to machines, but I think machines need to do a lot more for us. And we'll talk a lot more about that in terms of cybersecurity in a few minutes.
Yeah. And I just want to say that it's actually very very fun to have you on, because I've been saying that on the show for a while, that humans have had to learn how to talk to machines. Like, I have Amazon's digital assistant here on my desk, and it's always a challenge to be like, how do I make this thing do what I say, and like kind of talk like a computer, give it an input, a condition, that kind of thing. The true revolution needs to be, computers need to understand humans, not the other way around. So it's very nice to hear you say that.
That's exactly it. In fact, when I started my own companies back in 2011, launching my first one at TechCrunch Disrupt 2011, it was all about the real world around us and like, what should we do? Where should we go? And it's like, I'm really in the mood for amazing sushi, and I just landed in Florida and like Miami. And I want to go somewhere that my friend Ben's gone, and you could tell it, that kind of stuff, and it would tell you because of what it was doing.
That's awesome.
That was my first foray into NLP. But then I got a lot more serious about like, we got to solve real world problems using this stuff, and that's where we ended up with cyber. But I'll tell you all about that soon.
Yeah, definitely. And so your background, I mean, you've been in technology. You saw that humans and technology needed to communicate better, more efficiently, and just the fact that not everyone wants to learn to speak like a computer, like I was saying. And that is no different, I assume, than cybersecurity, because, and this is, again, one of the issues that is presented here on the show so often is that, people run businesses, they don't run IT companies. Now, all companies have to be security minded. All companies have to, be careful, especially if they handle, financial data or, any kind of personal information. So, and I'm sure that you took your attitude to this problem. Why cybersecurity, and what approach did you, kind of come into this space with?
So why cybersecurity? Why did I come into this space? About 5 to 6 years ago, I was really deep in the whole world of data analytics, machine learning, natural language. And I looked around and said, where are people having some of the biggest problems with this? Where's the maximum amount of alert fatigue? What are issues that we could solve that really could change the way businesses function, organizations function? And cybersecurity was just starting to become more and more of a thing. And I said, we need to help cyber. We need to help this side of the world. And there's just so much workforce dissatisfaction with the job, lots and lots of busy work. And like, that's the kind of stuff that NLP and machine learning is amazing at. And people are just drowning in data and drowning in data plumbing. So like, okay, let's help them first. And then we can help the general world of data and machines and human and machine interactions as we get bigger.
Makes perfect sense. And by the way, I'm assuming natural language processing is NLP. And that's just for anyone out there who may not have caught the acronym. It took me a second. Just real quick, over the past 3 or 4 years, this idea of machine learning, AI, natural language processing, like whatever you want to call it, it kind of broke onto the scene, and it had so many promises, so many breakthroughs, so many innovations. I wanted to ask you, like, is this marketing with all this stuff, or is it technology finally caught up? Like, why didn't we have this sooner? And how is it, how are these, at this point, they're buzzwords. How are these buzzwords actually affecting, let's just stick to cybersecurity?
Very well said. Very loaded question. So how has this changed, and how are people starting to talk about it? The last couple of years.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of cut in and just say that I'm not at all kind of just saying that you're just throwing out buzzwords. I'm more saying that people hear these words, but they may not know what it means. Is it really as innovative as it would have us think? Because, like you said, it's it does change the whole field when you add in machine learning.
Totally. So the short answer is totally not nearly as innovative as people think. Totally marketing buzzwords. And if you notice, if you look at anything I write, anything I talk about, and even my website, Fletch.ai, I really downplay machine learning. And I try to, and the reason being, especially AI, I downplay that too, is we're still in the early phases of it. And a lot of companies are using it as hype, especially companies that have been around a little bit longer. It's like, oh, we got to jump on the bandwagon. and it's very confusing to people.
Mm-hmm.
So natural language processing is the best use of it today is actually doing things like text extraction from newspaper articles and that kind of stuff, and topic modeling, and it takes actually a lot of training data. And the companies that are probably best at natural language processing, Google, Facebook, the big guys there, and they're actually really good at it, and they have some of the best people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What we do specifically is natural language search, and that's like being able to understand meaning out of your words. So if you say, hey, show me users who logged in from Asheville, North Carolina, like where you're located, right?
Right.
It needs to understand that Asheville is a place. It needs to understand that North Carolina is a place. It needs to understand what logged in means. It's no longer keyword search. That's a very specialized art in a way. And we've been at it for over 12 years. In fact, my co-founder wrote one of the de facto books in the space. NLTK is one of the major things, and it's NLTK toolkit book if you're interested. It's a pretty cool book, and it's been one thing that a lot of people love. And he actually founded one of the major blogs in the space called streamhacker.com. And so him and I actually are childhood friends. We always wanted to create companies together. This is actually our third together. So it's actually really cool. And him and I have this very strong belief that, okay, natural language is a part of it. Machine learning's a part of it. But the bigger part of it is how you apply it and how you build around it. So a lot of it really is a human and machine loop that's learning from each other. We can talk about that later if you want, as well as using smart algorithms and writing good code.
Yeah, and I think this would be a good time to obviously to introduce Fletch, because again, while I can't say these words on the air, cut through the stuff, get to the good stuff, let's just say, and trying to hand wave this away, because I feel like sometimes companies come on the show and we do our best for our audience is to break it down and make it into simple ideas. But you're right, sometimes they do kind of fluff it up and make it seem like we're at the cutting edge, like they are outsmarting their adversaries, they are bringing the best intelligence to their customers. But then when we do stories on this kind of stuff, I'm sure that they're like, how did you get hacked? Or how did this get through? And it's like, oh, well, the password was SolarWinds123, and things happen. Like it doesn't seem like it takes like this field doesn't seem that complicated. Like, I'm not saying that complicated things don't happen. I'm saying that there's improvement in the basics that we can do. And I feel like that's where Fletch might come in, but I'll let you say it. When you started Fletch, you mentioned before the show that, this is years in the making before you actually launched this. What approach did you take with Fletch? What hole what need in the market did you see and try to solve with Fletch?
So, If you rewind a bunch of years, I've actually spent a lot of time with some of the best security teams out there and some of the smallest out there as well. And the biggest observation you have time and time again is your best people are bogged down, drowning in data. And instead of focusing on solving hard security problems, they're having to focus on data plumbing, which is basically data entry in a higher tax bracket, I like to joke about. And they're all being forced to automate around and try to do things around antiquated systems. And they get stuck in these professional service loops of, okay, great, I found this really cool software. Okay, now it's going to take 6 to 9 months to deploy it. And it's like they never achieve the promise of what they're actually looking to do with a lot of the technologies out there. And so a few years ago, when I decided to create Fletch, it was not easy to make this decision, because the amount of heavy lifting we're doing behind the scenes to make something super simple to actually change an industry is huge. So what we're doing with Fletch is we're making it so that you no longer have to be this technician to be a cybersecurity expert. We can literally do all that heavy lifting, all that data modeling, all of that humdrum work for you. And then we can allow you to be able to change and adapt to be able to hire a new population. There's a huge talent gap in America. It's like 500,000 plus jobs in cyber that haven't been filled in the last couple of years. And COVID just exacerbated that massively.
Yeah.
And so if we can change an industry, man, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, it certainly has gotten to that point. And we have a question here about the current state and where you think it's heading. That might be a good place to start, because if I asked you that question, a year and a half ago, pre-COVID, obviously, you might say, well, over the next 10 years, and from a lot of the data that we've shown here on the show, it's what might have taken 10 years in 2019. By we, I'm taking all the credit for it. We have done 10 years of adoption in like a year, because companies were forced to. They were forced to work from home. They were forced to handle data, of a sensitive nature. A lot of adoption of these online and working remotely, that kind of thing. But security, I feel like they were just kind of using what they best had at hand. So I'm going to ask you now, in this turbulent time, what is the state of the industry and where do you think it's heading from here? Because it's been shaken up.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting that you put it that way. You almost answered the question. I agree with you. It needs to get shaken up. What happened in the last year, the world just moved this fast, but the security side of the world is still here because you can't move nearly as fast there. So the whole world moves to cloud and everybody goes remote. And so it's a bunch of little tiny point applications. It's like a Great Wall of China. Mm-hmm. And there's something that does this and something that does that. It's all just a bunch of small black boxes that need a lot of configuration and need a lot of upkeep. And so we're in the middle of is we're like, okay, we have these problems we need to solve. We need to solve things like ransomware. We need to solve things where we have better monitoring of our workforce. We need to solve things like better monitoring of our cloud. But if I deploy all these technologies, all I'm going to do to my team is alert fatigue. Right. And that's not going to move things forward. And so we're in this really interesting transformational state where it's like the opportunity to create new technologies is so ripe, and the need in the market to do this is so high. Not even talk about cost. We can even talk about cost. It's expensive right now.
Yeah, and we can definitely talk about costs real quick. And reading through some of these questions, there's a lot of kind of the field in general, which I would definitely love to, and we are going to talk about that, but to kind of focus on Fletch, because we introduced this company, and you have two different solutions here on your website that you list. The insider threat and the emerging threats. It's kind of fun because monitoring emerging threats, this is one that so many companies that are hacked have to deal with. And this caught my attention because and there are regulations in place that thanks to the European Data Protection Law, whatever that thing was called, it's like GDPR. There we go. Thank you. So they have to report that they've been hacked, that information about their customers has been taken, stolen, potentially looked at, and then they spend the next year and a half trying to figure out what was actually looked at, what was found, what was stolen or compromised in any way. You have this product here that, and you're free to kind of explain how your product would do this, but getting the full scope of a hacking is one of the most challenging parts of these breaches. How has Fletch kind of worked on this? How have you fixed it? Or is this just, again, putting the system in place so that going forward you'll have a better idea of this?
So these are the two things that we're launching with here. Fletch is just going more public in September, and so we're starting to put some things up there.
Perfect.
It's a very versatile platform. We think about the world very differently. Historically, the world's been a bunch of tools, and it's been things that you need to configure and spend half a year, if not more. A lot of professional service dollars, a lot of cost goes into it. And we think about it, it should be turnkey. And thinking about it that way, it really led us to do a lot of market research and spend a lot of time with folks to say, okay, if it's going to be turnkey, instead of solving all the low-level alerting and stuff that people have been drowning in for years, right? Let's solve things at the highest level. Let's actually solve the problem instead of just giving vitamins. And so cut them out, like they cut it off of the past kind of attitude. And so as we go public with Fletch, instead of saying, hey, we have this really cool natural language platform, and we can do all sorts of use case development and share ideas, we're like, there's two major things that matter more than anything right now with what's going on in the world. Your workforce and protecting your workforce, that they're your biggest asset. They're also your weakest link. Whether there's deliberate bad actors in there, or there is people that snuck in, or there are just carelessness. Carelessness is probably number one, by the way. And it's being able to actually get in there and monitor your population a lot more effectively, and not be like Big Brother-ish on them, but be able to create a world where if it's clearly not them, the security team can tell. And that's very hard today and very expensive today. And so we said, okay, one thing we can do is we can help solve the insider threat problem. We can make it very easy with our natural language search engine to be able to do one-click search into any person that you think is a threat. So let's say your account was taken over. I needed to check out Ben. You just type it in, Ben, and you see everything instantly. Stuff that would take you weeks to pull together instantly comes alive on the screen. The next thing we noticed is that everybody's drowning in small little alerts. And so insider threat needed to be looked at very differently. And so we said, okay, well, we'll ask all the right questions for you. We'll start modeling people versus their own behaviors. And if they start moving really far out of those behaviors, we'll start telling you how people are looking very different than themselves. Well, that changes the whole game, because now you have a very fast, very easy way to monitor insider threat. And we are starting doing it in a really simple way. What does everybody have? Everybody has either G Suite or 365. And there's a wealth of information because most people are using that as their single sign-on. So if we can just start there as we expand to the entire workplace and all the SaaS products people use and cloud products, that starts giving you telemetry and serves as this amazing proxy to be able to actually do this job extremely fast and effectively. So things that take 6 months, a year today, overnight. And that's already changing quite a bit for people. And so that one's actually already in beta with quite a few customers. The other one that you mentioned, why we're going to market with emerging threat, is a very unique way to look at cybersecurity. So every single day, the CEO comes to you and says, hey, Ben, I heard about this in the news, Ben. In fact, I may have heard about it on Computer America, right? And I want to know if we're vulnerable to it, or I want to know if anything's going on with it. Well, what if a smart engine could be looking at all the news that was going on and pulling in all your vulnerability data and pulling in all your endpoint data and saying, hey, Ben, I just read the news in context of your company, and you are affected by this one. You're not affected by this one. And now your team's priorities can shift accordingly to what's really important. Instead of your team spending the next day or 2 days or more having to do this triangulation of data. That's the real power of machine learning and natural language, is doing stuff like that. The humdrum work, the work that you shouldn't be having humans do, this is where machines really do a beautiful job of coming in. And so launching with those two things, those are your two biggest problems where all things start in cybersecurity. And so if we can start at the very top, there's tons of things we can do as things get deeper. But with this, we cover like 80% of most companies' needs, especially in the mid-market.
Yeah, and of course, I could see where your experience with the natural language processing and again, computers learning to speak like humans really comes in handy with things like headlines. And of course, I'm sure that you can monitor things that are much more up to date than just like CNN.com or something like that. I'm sure that you could do actual research papers and other breaking and, like you said, emerging threats. This is very cool. And obviously for anyone out there watching the video portion, you can see little examples here of this, looking at these and, the way that you display data, you did mention it's very intuitive. There's a heat map, a chart, there's, kind of little bar graphs down here. And you even give us some statistics that show maybe abnormal login frequency, accounts with multiple concurrent sessions. The thing I like about your solutions that you've already outlined here is that it's not like you have to, it's like, oh, let's tear everything down, build it back up, and it's going to be safer. Or, we have this secret new piece of technology that no one else has. No, you are taking data that is readily available and then putting it together effectively and quickly. And that, I think, is where good, true innovation happens, are these minor steps forward in taking data, taking data that's already there. It's not like you're trying to generate more data, you're just displaying it better. And of course, also tying in data that was not available to computers, like, headlines and people frequency, stuff like that. I wanted to take a little bit of a headline. I'm sure that you keep up to date on tech news and cybersecurity news. This happened about a month ago, and they got a recent arrest. The actual event happened about a year ago. Do you recall the Twitter hacking that happened, where like everyone's a ton of celebrities' Twitter profiles were taken over, and they shared a bogus Bitcoin wallet, and they were like, "Send us Bitcoin." Do you recall that happening about a year ago?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to, some quick background on that. There was they had a contractor working within Twitter, and they gave the credentials, or at least they allowed people from outside access to Twitter's backend, and and they were able to send out tweets as anyone that they wanted to. You're saying that using something like Fletch, that would have been very apparent much more quickly, that being like, hey, this one person has allowed access from Europe, from Florida, and places that you don't have any employees. Maybe you should look into this. Maybe this is an area of concern. That's something, an instance like that, and that's using a real world example. Fletch would have been able to prevent that in some manner, or at least warn people.
Yeah, and so that's actually a great example. These kind of behaviors you just mentioned in isolation aren't that meaningful, but what's really meaningful is when you can take the stuff that's happening out there, and you can be very transparent to people, like, hey, we all know these are the things you should be monitoring, but putting them together in a smart way to create patterns for you to figure out who's riskiest, that's where Fletch really excels. And something like what you just mentioned, seeing the location, seeing the files access that are new that somebody's never touched before, right, seeing the new IPs, and the triangulation and the computation of that information, so the correlation, that makes all the difference. And so something like you just mentioned, what Fletch does is it serves almost as an early warning system for people. Like, hey, this person's starting to act out of their norm. And smart people don't just come in and on a Friday afternoon and just grab the whole list. No, they don't do that at all. Right. They'll do one behavior today, and they'll do one behavior tomorrow, and another behavior maybe was 30 days ago. And so what Fletch does an amazing job at is grabbing all these behaviors that happen at different times and starts developing patterns for you to say, hey, this doesn't really look like Grant anymore. Or, hey, this may be Grant, but maybe Grant got paid off in some way or something like that consultant. And so something like the case you mentioned, case in point of why we started with an insider threat problem.
Yeah, and that certainly is very, very hard to do, because obviously if this were easy, I mean, then everyone would be doing it, and it's I think technology is definitely going to catch up to to the solution. So going back to to your homepage here, this is also, kind of gauge the impact of emerging threats. We kind of highlighted that a little bit, saying that, whatever's happening out there, hey, there are trends. If something is a popular way that people are injecting ransomware or things like that, as I said way back when, it's like, the way that a lot of these large companies and entities get hacked is they don't cover their bases. They don't do the basics, and hey, they don't even update their systems or do security updates. So Fletch really it almost sounds like if you have Fletch, you are essentially getting a security researcher who's always on the ball. Like that honestly seems like what you're doing is you are giving people a platform that is a security researcher for their company.
You're absolutely correct. So most companies, now that everybody's a tech company, like you said earlier in our conversation, most companies cannot afford those super awesome people. And so if we can change an industry as the industry is moving so fast, why not? And that's exactly it. So you probably have one person security, or maybe you have an IT person who's moonlighting and doing security too. This is happening. 500-person companies, 1,000-person companies, they don't have the budget, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the skills, they can't recruit for it. Even if they can, they end up with people who are like kind of in a vacuum and overloaded. And so yes, Fletch coming in, being an analyst, being a security researcher, doing that hard work, and making that individual's job something where they can do the work of 10 people, but be able to have room to breathe and focus on security problems and not data plumbing. That's why we invented it. Case in point. Thank you so much. Yeah. I couldn't have said it by myself, man.
Well, and no, it definitely sounds like what the industry needs. So many positions in this field are unfilled, so it's not really a matter of putting all of them out of work. It's putting them to work more effectively, like you were saying. And looking here, you have these kind of steps and this idea that you just kind of take the user data. Now, one thing I was curious about, and because this is security, I can ask this. AI tends to get better with the more data that you put into it. The more it learns, and of course, the better data that you can put into it, the better it can do its job. I'm sure that it might have been tempting at some level to have like all of your customers' data come in, train your AI, and maybe, obviously it wouldn't be for one individual organization, but it might do certain things better across the whole system. Do you take any information from your customers and use it to train, a product that would then be used on other on other platforms or other customers? Is everything siloed so that so that no data kind of gets out for your customers? How do you handle your customers' data when it comes to Fletch?
So, good question. How do we handle customer data? Customer data is kept siloed and private and locked down, and there's plenty of security measures taken, and we could talk all about those in boring detail. It's very important to us. I mean, we are in the security business, so that side of the world all locked down. Okay. And we actually also, another point of security, we don't focus on bringing in all the customers' data. If we don't need it for the algorithms, we're not going to grab it. We don't want to have it all. And we also are very cautious not to focus on the data you have inside. We don't want the data inside your AWS databases. We don't want the data inside of your G Suite documents and stuff. What we want to know the actions and interactions happening around it, the logs, the metadata, the lay of the land. That's what we care about. And there's a lot of research around this. It's like that's kind of what we call green data, and it's not exactly the super proprietary stuff. It's not your crown jewels. So your crown jewels would never come over to Fletch.
Gotcha.
To answer the second part of your question, yes, the machine learns, and it learns all the time. But we've done some really clever things to make it learn in this kind of world. It learns more of the actions that people are taking within the product, and it learns from general macro trends that it can extract from various data. It never does it ever expose any of this data or anything like that. We actually invented something really cool in Fletch. It's called ClearShare. It would enable me to come up with great ideas. So let's say I know the 5 threats that are going on today that the world really cares about. You're going to see this in a few weeks. I put them up on what we call a board and say, hey, Ben, here's the 5 things I really care about. And I send you over my natural language questions. I send you over how to look at them, and I send you over my analysis. And you're like, awesome. And instantly when you open that page, it repopulates with your data. And so that's how serious we take this. Sharing of ideas without sharing data has never existed. And today in the cybersecurity industry, it's something that people always dreamed of. They share threat intelligence and ideas across various companies in different sectors all the time. Like Macy's and Nordstrom's and the retail folks share. The financial banks like B of A, Citibank, et cetera, share. Kaiser and Sutter and stuff share. They all are. And so if you have easier ways for people to share the ideas without ever sharing data, that'll move the industry forward massively too. And so you'll see a big part of it as Fletch goes to market here. We'll be talking a lot about that and sharing that. You can share them to you and you can show them on Computer America. They're meant to be basically articles.
Right. Yeah. And that's really, really cool because I can recall when every little piece of data, used to be collected, from everything, every input, every interaction, every impression. And it's very nice to hear that the industry is kind of moving away from that because you can glean, very minute details about someone, but, to use all that data, sometimes you don't want to, share every little thing that that you are sharing with that. So I'm glad that the industry is at least moving to take the information that's going to be helpful for for us to do our job and not just collect data because it might be useful later. That was always kind of a scary part of data collection to me. I cannot say the industry is moving that way. I can say we think this way and we're moving this way. Well, I'm glad you think that way at least.
Yeah. Have purpose before you actually start grabbing all the data. In fact, I wrote some funny stuff, that show on Netflix, Marie Kondo. Like the whole idea of like cleaning out your closet and clutter and things you don't need.
Right.
The historical norm in cybersecurity is save it all for a rainy day, put it in silos. The problem is once you put it in a data lake, it becomes a data swamp. And so we take a very different approach to this. Be purposeful about what you're trying to solve. In this case, if you're coming into Fletch, go solution first. Grab that insider threat solution, connect the G Suite, connect the 365, connect your Okta, instantly start getting results about that exact need. We're not going to go take in all your data, get value from that piece, then proceed to get other value from other offerings that we do.
Right. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, again, kind of Fletch.ai, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes, but I was just, kind of poking through your resources here. You have your newsletter, you have a very prolific writer with a ton of different articles and kind of current events. Really, really nice stuff to see here. And, you guys cover a lot of the, of the big hackings, which leads me to this question about, where are you seeing a lot of the momentum? Because here in your articles, you were mentioning healthcare a lot because healthcare has been a liability. Obviously, with COVID, more people are going to the doctor, more medical procedures are, kind of happening. Why medicine of all fields? Because you would think that you go where the money is. You go where sensitive data might be. But who cares if I broke my foot? 3 years ago. Like, why do you? Actually, no. And again, I was about to say why healthcare, but I was about to say, where do you see a lot of the momentum in cybersecurity, and how is this affecting organizations and consumers alike? That was the question I had.
Okay, interesting. So two things. One, healthcare. I do want to answer that for you.
Sure.
It is where the data is. It is very powerful data. You can fake identities with healthcare data very fast. Prescriptions are extremely valuable, especially in the black market. That's and being able to blackmail people who are in positions of public leadership and stuff based on the prescriptions or various diseases they may have, or think about an unwanted abortion, stuff like that. Healthcare records are very valuable. So where are we seeing the space going, and how is that affecting organizations and consumers? So the world's moving to the cloud. We all know the world's moving to the cloud, and it's changing at to the speed of code, I like to say. So now the engineers are in the driver's seat. It used to be IT had a perimeter to protect it. And this acceleration during the pandemic has moved at a rate like this, but organizations are just starting to be able to kind of catch up. Most are drowning underwater with this. And so this is a part I'm really passionate about, and why I'm excited with the timing of when we're releasing this this technology. Everybody should move to the cloud. Sure, it's efficiencies you got. But as you move to the cloud, hey, you need good people helping you.
Yeah, and the answer to that has, at least in recent years, has been, well, there was this idea of the cloud. It was nebulous, and whatever provider you had, it was just kind of the cloud. Lately, we've been hearing about kind of people's personal clouds, where it's not that you can just rely on Microsoft or Amazon to kind of run your cloud and your security and all that stuff, but to make your system operate as best as it can. You essentially, you still rent server space, but then you operate every part of that cloud in terms of access, security, data management, like every little part of that. And how are organizations supposed to do that? Just financial institutions, medical institutions, mom and pop bakery, small, medium business, they're not tech companies. And for to tell them you need to redesign your entire cloud infrastructure, they're probably like, that's not in our budget because we don't care. How do they start to get ahead of that?
So that is a really good question. How do they start getting ahead of it? One, there are a lot of out-of-the-box things you can do with all the providers. Getting locked into one provider is something that I caution people on. So using more general-purpose technologies, try to be multi-cloud. And some of the biggest problems you're going to face if you start doing this is you're going to face a lot of alert fatigue. People are going to be drowning in data. You said it a few times now. You don't have the talent gap, and they're dealing with just a barrage of information. And so start lowering that footprint and focusing on just a set of things that's mandatory for your company, and then take it in strides. Protect certain things, like start with protecting your workforce, start with protecting like the biggest things that matter, your crown jewels, and do a map of that. Mm-hmm. Don't try to take it in all at once. It's completely overwhelming. And actually, I write a lot about that kind of stuff. So I'm happy that if people want to see all the resources I write about that kind of stuff. I'm very passionate about it, even if it's not stuff I can do at my company, which I can do a lot of it. But I like to be a resource for people too.
I heard the same advice about dieting. If you want to make good habits, do small things that you can actually do routinely, and then work up from there instead of just trying to make all your changes at once, because it's pretty unsustainable. Good diet advice. I like that. That's it's also good cybersecurity advice. I never knew. So with that being said, if and that's obviously where they should focus. And I definitely have to agree. Like I was saying with SolarWinds, with a lot of these recent hacking, like the Kaseya hacking that happened. I think someone, I don't think they released everything that happened there, but I'm pretty sure it was someone clicking a bad link that led intruders in, and then of course they were able to affect the software from the back end, and it affected millions of customers, 1,500 companies around the world. Just a nightmare. And again, it's just the basics. If they were to focus on the basics, that's important. And again, Fletch would be the one to kind of warn you that, hey, your basics are not covered.
That's actually case in point of why we're focusing on making things extremely affordable too. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you're a mom and pop company with 100 employees. That insider threat stuff I'm talking about that seems so complicated. We do so much heavy lifting. We're only going to charge you $100 a month for it right now. Like, we're making it so this stuff can be really easy and it can be digestible by people who are not technical, by the owners of the business, the operators of the business. And so it's really exciting to do that. So starting with your people, and that's a great place to be. And then also monitoring the stuff out there in the market, just like we've been talking about. So yeah.
What would determine your pricing scale? Because you can on your site you can request a demo, and I'm sure that you have consultants that you talk with. What kind of shifts the price point for you? Is it the amount of data? Is it the amount of users that you have? What kind of shifts your price points?
So shifting our price points, I want to back up just 1 second. The industry in general is very expensive. Yeah. And cybersecurity has been a world which it's like, okay, well, we can charge a lot for this stuff because people don't totally understand it. And there's a handful of people who make a lot of money on the data plumbing side, lots of professional services. And so the whole industry has been focused on that model of enterprise sales. And I think that needs to change a lot. no more, no more, hey, call us for a quote. No more like, hey, how much do you have? Moving to a world of, hey, this is how much it costs. It can be affordable, and make it very simple and understandable to charge for it. And so we could charge a lot of money for our products. They're very valuable. They're very powerful, but that's not going to create a revolution. That's not going to solve this massive problem that we're all facing as everybody becomes an IT company. So making things super affordable, making them very bite-sized, solving specific problems for people. Things like protecting your workforce, things like knowing if things are going on in the news that affect you at all instantly. That's why we're focused on that kind of stuff. And so making it free for people to get started is really important to me. Let them have a taste. Let them see how easy this could be. And another thing that's important to me is potentially even enabling them to, once they actually start paying, they're like, oh, this is no brainer to pay for this thing.
Right.
And that's really important as well. And make it all automated in the sense that the people that they're working with on our side will be the people helping them solve problems, not the people who are necessarily trying to say like, hey, you just need to spend more money with us. No, we're helping you solve problems. We're automatically helping you solve problems, and we have great support behind that. That's the model I love to scale.
Yeah, it's and you have definitely said what the industry currently does, because even I just said I did not ask for your prices, because it usually is enterprise pricing, and it's like, oh, have a consultant, and odds are it's going to end up in the $200,000-$300,000 range to even kind of get started. It's and not a lot of small medium businesses can afford that, but of course the large guys, they just eat the cost and raise the price for everyone. I wanted to kind of ask, and I had a question, but it completely just blew out of my mind. I'm so sorry. It kind of had to do with typical customer. What does a typical customer look like to you? Because we've mentioned a lot of different industries, and 100-person business. I'm sure large enterprise would also find value in your software. What industries, what sectors, who would you recommend give Fletch a look? Is this someone who are you strictly people who handle customers and personal data? What sectors, or what does your customer look like?
So our customer looks like, and where we're focused on, is a very underserved part of the market. It's those companies that are 100 to about 1,000 employees. I call that mid-market. And with that sector, you've seen one or two people on security teams, sometimes 5 or 6, but it's very rare. And those people need a lot of help to supersize themselves, and they don't have the budgets to deploy every awesome, cool new tool, or hire those professional service firms, or hire a workforce of security workers like the big banks do. And so I'm focused on those that you could say are less tooled out, that have a more of an acute need. Those folks. And I'm focused on sectors where we're seeing a lot of targeting by they call the bad guys, or the hackers, mostly nation states. You're seeing it in healthcare. You're seeing it in tech companies. Like stealing of IP is very important. Right. You're seeing it in biopharmaceutical companies. Oh, if we can steal that formula for the synthetic type of molecule, well, hey, we can start manufacturing that in China. Right. And so the folks who are seeing a lot of uptake are around there. And yes, the big companies like our stuff. They see it as an add-on to the world they're in, a very quick way to triage things. And then they can go into their massive workforce of people and be able to optimize those folks as well. But we're not totally focused on them. Actually, my last company, I totally focused on them and the secret agencies and stuff. It was awesome. But that's not going to move the needle of the entire world, the entire country.
Right.
And so that was the impetus for Fletch, just really change things.
Makes perfect sense. And I I got to say that I'm sure that you had a lot of fun working with those agencies. And I would even add, and I know that's your list, and it's probably very presumptive of me to kind of add to it, but infrastructure, and I know that infrastructure is not exactly 100 to 1,000 people strong, but there are a lot of local governments and kind of smaller school systems, places like that they're being targeted so often. Like that's a lot of the news, is that so and so school system is hacked, or so and so water plant has been infiltrated. Like that's getting to be a big problem. So it's
interesting, the EDU space, and we are actually working with some folks in the EDU space, is they actually have a pretty interesting problem where a lot of them have not segmented their faculty from their student population. And then some of the municipalities, well, if you look at these municipality websites, I'm sure you've used plenty of them to pay your water bill or something. You're like, oh my gosh, so stuck in the dark ages. Yes, I think those folks can really benefit from Fletch. What I am seeing is that there's an education element we have to go in there with. It's almost too good to believe for a lot of them. A lot of them wanted things like us for a while, and they're just starting. They're a little bit slow to adopt the cloud and that kind of stuff. And so I think in about a year from now, you'll see a lot of folks in that world starting to standardize on using Fletch technologies. I'm very thankful of that for them.
Right. And, just to wrap up this here a little bit, we have this question here about what could automation mean for an industry like cybersecurity. But I think if people want an answer to that, they can just check out our whole interview, because that's really what you've been highlighting, is that, it alleviates, people to do their jobs better, and, they can do the jobs that they actually need to do. Whereas the mundane stuff, kind of gets handled, taken care of. And hey, a lot of the basic problems kind of get solved, because they are basic problems. It's just you don't need the guy making $150,000 a year to go tell people to change their passwords. Stuff, and I'm sure stuff like that, right?
You're absolutely right. And so, what could automation mean for the industry? The industry is kind of masquerading in a way like, hey, everything's automated. It's not. It all requires 6-9 months of professional services to deploy. And so, exactly what you're saying. We need things that are fast. We need things that are affordable, effective, and approachable, inclusive for a new population that's just starting to realize this is something they need to care about.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with kind of the last word. Is there any topic or any area of Fletch, any part of really cybersecurity that we didn't cover that you would like to touch on before we wrap up?
So a last thought, based on a lot of things you've been saying throughout this conversation, is this is more urgent than people realize. And getting this visibility and getting this peace of mind is more important now than ever. The infrastructures and the organizations and the change that's happening in the world. And so really helping people during this transformational period is just like, and this whole conversation just makes me want to just like scream from the rooftops, like it's time to change. It's time to change. Check it out. So thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and certainly our pleasure. And I was just trying to think of one more real world solution that that can kind of come from this. And I was just thinking about the quote unquote hack that happened with LinkedIn, where someone did some profile scraping. And profile scraping is not exactly hacking because it's public facing and anyone can do it. But potentially, I guess with Fletch, you could say, oh, this one user has been accessing every single page of LinkedIn. Maybe we should block this connection or stop that from happening, because who can look at 700 million profiles in the course of like 2 weeks, stuff like that. I'm sure automation is key. Automation is what's going to save a lot of this, and I'm really happy that you can come on the show and talk to us about your endeavors. And I'm sure that you and your co-founder and a lot of very talented people have put their efforts into Fletch, and I do hope that you have that revolution, because that revolution is a long time coming. The bad guys are staying ahead of cybersecurity, and industry is just jumping headfirst into it. So I'm really happy that you came on the show. And again, thank you so much. We have been talking to the CEO and co-founder of Fletch, Mr. Grant Wernick. And Grant, again, thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. It was awesome to be here.
All right, perfect. And we're going to do computer and technology news. So again, I'm going to do that abrupt hang up thing. But before you go, I wanted to, of course, mention that Grant, our interview, this lasted about 54 minutes. So I wanted to get one story in, so I had to cut you short. But we did an hour. Good job. And again, it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, Ben. I really appreciate it. We're not recording now, are we?
No, we are actually, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of end the Zoom call, do our own thing, and we're going to do computer and technology news. But Grant, until next time, we'll stay in touch, and thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Awesome. See you soon.
All right, bye. And everyone, we're going to go ahead and do computer and technology news. That's brought to you by Computer America. Let's go ahead and play the music, get started. We hope you enjoyed that. We definitely enjoyed having Fletch on. That was definitely a lot of fun. So here we go. We have time for like one, maybe two. Okay, let's see. So one, maybe two. How about we discuss Nikola? And Nikola, not Tesla, but I guess the car company. And we've said multiple times that the best thing that Nikola, the car company, ever did was name themselves Nikola, because as far as everyone goes, they're going to associate it with Tesla and put them on what is essentially even footing, with Tesla. And well, if you recall, there was a product reveal of an electric truck that an electric semi truck that they put out, where it was rolling down the road. It was very well shot with a drone, very professional looking, and essentially the CEO had to come out later and say, well, we never said it was driving under its own power. No, it was just rolling gently down a hill, and thanks to some cinematography, everyone just assumed, it's not our fault that you assumed this battery-powered truck was running on battery power. It was running on gravity. Well, that whole situation, if you recall, he has been charged. Well, let's see, and I believe this is actually the founder, Trevor Milton, was charged with securities fraud, because lying like that is still lying, and that is a bad thing. Milton sold a version of Nikola not as it was an early stage company with a novel idea to commercialize yet to be proven products and technology, but rather as a trailblazing company that had already achieved many groundbreaking and game-changing milestones. Because if you recall, Nikola was supposed to be selling, and I keep saying battery power, fuel cell. They were selling hydrogen fuel cell, and essentially saying that we have a product ready to ship out the door. All you have to do is buy it, and this is the future. Not so much. They still had, even in their own best estimates, and we've covered this to the nth degree, their product demonstration, their videos, their product, details, they were getting $2 billion from General Motors. They were getting billions from investors, and the most they had to show for it was a truck that couldn't drive and a factory that was all CGI. There wasn't even a factory. They bought a plot of land, and they were acting like they had a factory up and running. It was a scam of all scams. Well, they said that less than a week after the plans were announced, a report from short seller firm Hindenburg Research accused the company of fraud based on conversations with a former employee. The report alleged that a much publicized demonstration was not capable of moving under its own power, as we mentioned. And the indictment, so the current securities fraud charge, the indictment claims a few weeks before the event, Nikola's chief engineer informed Milton that the truck would not be functioning at the unveiling event unless the event was postponed. Milton made the decision to proceed as scheduled with the knowledge that the vehicle to be unveiled would not be functioning. So what they had was a towing and rolling process, and they towed it to the top of the hill, rolled it down, and it had the appearance of moving. Now, the final version of the video was posted to Nikola's official Facebook, YouTube, Twitter accounts with the caption, "Behold, the Nikola One in motion." Notice they never said the Nikola One driving or anything like that. It was just in motion, and technically it was full of potential energy. There you go. Now, the indictment also gives more detail on precisely how non-functional the vehicle was. The prosecutors say that all electrical components in the truck were powered externally, rather than from the truck's battery. Neither the fuel cell nor hydrogen gas storage tanks had been installed, and the air compressor and turbine had not been commissioned. The gearboxes had not been assembled, and the vehicle level controls were not complete. The dashboard interface that Milton appeared to use to start the truck was an off-the-shelf tablet and was not integrated into the vehicle system in any way. Scam upon scam upon scam. That's about as good as you get. This thing might as well have just been a cardboard and styrofoam shell that had a tablet glued onto it. And they unveiled it to the world as a product ready to go. Fallout from the report was swift and devastating. General Motors backed out of the equity deal. They stepped down as executive chairman. The company has continued to operate but scaled down its ambition significantly. Nikola halted work on its planned electric ATV and motorboat, a decision that cost the company $14 million according to regulatory filings. This whole company, like I said, the best thing they ever did was name themselves Nikola because it put them on somewhat of an even footing with Tesla. And regardless what you think about Tesla, about Elon Musk, they definitely tried their best to do what they did. So everyone, the music means that we're done. Thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. Catch us next time, computeramerica.com, Fletch.ai. We want to thank again our guests for joining us. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.